Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CA Overwatch. We have a very special guest with us today, the analyst and strategy coach for Toronto Defiant, Barroi. Barroi, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, awesome. I was going to say, I did a little bit of an introduction, but if you want to say some stuff about yourself, now's the time, and then we can get into it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Barroi. I worked with the team last season through our up and down roller coaster,
Yeah, you can say
I
that.
want to call it.
Yeah,
And
it's a good way of
now
putting
I'm
it.
at it again.
Awesome.
One of the few members that's still undefined,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're looking to make this season a lot better.
You and Roki, the OGs.
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully this one's more of an upwards trajectory and not the roller coaster that last year was. But
Any
okay.
trajectory. Any trajectory is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Barroi, I think one of the largest things that people knew about you from before you started trying was Winston Labs.
Yeah.
Now, that's always really interested me because it was one of the bigger, more comprehensive statistical bases that you could get before the new beta came out, this Stats Lab beta.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you tell me more about, I guess, like what inspired you to create it, and kind of like how, because I'm not from a stats background, how exactly did you measure all these different stats?
Okay. So it all started because back then I was into League of Legends, but and I made some money. I was a professional gambler in League of Legends. I was one of the few who could actually call themselves professional.
I did not know
but
that. That's cool.
Then for multiple reasons, things in the industry shifted and the whole scene kind of collapsed. So I had to look for something new, and I wasn't necessarily trying to go into League of Legends. I actually, at some point, I tried to become like a coach for Fnatic or something, but that didn't work out. But then Overwatch came out, so I started following the whole game, and there was like no statistics, like nothing in Overwatch.
Yeah.
And I came from League of Legends, where like one guy had had his own stats website where you could go to and look at, but there was nothing in Overwatch. So I waited. I'm like, okay, someone will figure it out.
Yeah.
Someone will do this. And I waited for like months and months, and I'm like, okay, I guess nothing's gonna happen. So I just like did it myself because I was like, okay, if no one else is gonna do it, then I just gotta have to, because I want to look at stats myself.
Yeah.
So I started collecting like everything in like a huge database first, just for myself, because I didn't really give a damn about what others want. So I just did it for myself. But then, because nothing was happening, I just figured I'd make it public, and that's how Winston's Lab got to be. Basically, that's like the main story behind it. As for how I get all those stats, it's actually just it's a computer vision program that literally looks at the video and it checks like. It's like a human reading the screen. It sees like, oh, Lucio's being played, and there's a Vine and stuff, and then it looks at the kill feed and the ults, and from that you derive very basic statistics. And after that you can, and that's what I basically did over the years. Like you can create new statistics from those very basic ones, and look at actually very deep and interesting stuff that is now being used in the Overwatch League for the most part. A lot of the stuff that I did early on is, can now be found in Overwatch League broadcasts. So that's pretty nice.
That is really cool.
That is a really cool stats product, especially that you pioneered that. So when you were collecting it, you basically just went on and looked at, clicked on a video, you launched the software, moved on to another video. That must have been pretty labor intensive.
Yes, it was a lot of work. Like early on, it was like not very optimized, so there was a lot of stuff that you had to do manually extra on top of the video. And I was always down to like having all the stats like for everything that was happening, and there were like so many tournaments back then that I just wanted to know everything.
Yeah.
There was a lot of work. It was nice. Yeah, looking back at this, it's a nice Nice time, good times.
Oh,
That's so funny. So since you kind of made your name in this whole like Winston's Lab thing and the whole stats aspect of it, and then obviously a big addition to season 3 of the Overwatch League is the new stats lab thing, right? And I was playing
Yeah.
around with it myself, and it's pretty cool. And I can get some tidbits. I know it's early, right? Like I don't want to make too much of. Oh, I noticed this after one game. But what would be some of, I guess, some of the things that you would recommend people look out for if they're trying to get some statistical analysis from the first couple of weeks, since you are, that is your like bread and butter.
Sure. So, like the most important thing, and I don't know how much you can find of it on the StatsLab website because I haven't played with it myself yet.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important things are always teamfight related stats. If you want to actually look at like how well teams are doing, you probably want to look at like team fights and, for example, if you want to check how good they are with like one specific team comp, you would check like how many team fights they would win, like what's their team fight win percentage, because that is the closest you can get to something that would be like related to actually winning matches or winning maps. Like if you have a high team fight win percentage, that means your map win rate will be high as well. But since you switch comps on a map, you can't look at like just map win rate. So if you want to look at like team comps, you would look at fight win rate.
Yeah.
For example.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, those are the cool things I noticed about like the first map versus Paris. It was like you guys lost like 40% of your team fights in Horizon Lunar Colony, but like ended up winning it, not easily, but like somewhat convincingly, and I just thought that was interesting.
Yes, there's a lot of like nice stats that you can look at that is just often just interesting to look at. For example, if you want to look at Widow 1v1s, there's probably something on that website just for that, just to see like who's actually the best Widow in just 1v1s, but in the actual game, not just like a 1v1 by itself.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. Now, in terms of those team fight stats, do you know if that includes, poke phase? Like prior poke phase?
Yeah, because it includes it in a way that the damage might not be included, but what is included is the kills, and the kills are obviously the most important.
Yeah.
Something that you can find that was like more or less a huge find back like in 2018 or 17 or whatever it was that if you win the first fight, if you get the first kill of a team fight, you win like 80% of your fights.
Yeah.
You have an 80% chance to win the fight by just getting the first kill. So just getting to that first kill is insane. Because if you think about it, that's not necessarily something that you would expect, because you would think, okay, we have 5v6, but we can still clutch it, right? But that's actually not the case. In general, I think you need like 3 more ultimates to make up a one-man disadvantage, which is kind of a big deal at this point.
Yeah, that's a lot to invest.
Just getting that first kill is insanely valuable, and that's why a lot of teams started playing a lot more proactively after the initial phase of Overwatch, when we all figured that out.
Yeah. And obviously, I know a big part of it would be which character gets picked, right? Like, I just remember the GOATs. Everyone, like, it's one thing if you were to lose your, Brig or your Reinhardt, right? It seemed like everyone lost their Reinhardt first, but to lose your Zarya first was like this massive deal, right? I forget where it ended up, but there was a point where it was like, if you lost your Zarya first, you lost like 93% of team fights or something crazy like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I can imagine that a lot of it is you can't really clutch out, because when you have, people who are playing Owl, they're hitting their ceilings, they're hitting the skill ceiling.
Yeah.
And so when it comes down to that, you're literally just playing with stats. It's just like, who has the best statistical advantage? Who's pumping out the most, resources? Who's pumping out the most damage, healing per second? It comes down to that basic stuff, which allows you to have, such a great time being a big stats guy. It's probably heavy. You're probably like, goal, like, let's get it.
Exactly. Yeah, sorry.
No, you keep going. Sorry, I was gonna ask another question, but continue.
It's often insane to see like if I would just make a team by myself, and I would like completely be in charge of the team, and if everything would go to my willing, like I would tell them to just like stop fighting after you lose one and just like reset or like die or something. But actually, like just being at this very top of the competitiveness in Overwatch League, you can't just tell that your team, because those guys sometimes they just hit a crazy fucking headshot on you. Like, okay, then just like do that, I guess.
Yeah.
That's when like stats stop mattering at this point, because like it's insane what those people can do at this level, where there's a lot that you can do, but if stuff like this happens, then you're like, okay, that's the game then.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. That's funny.
Exactly.
Because like when you look at just off the top of my head, the whole like Carpe clutching in on against Washington Justice, right? Where like I bet you all the stats were screaming. I wonder if someone broke down the statistical likelihood that Washington wins that map with like 2 picks, and the team comp was like they're all on Wrecking Ball, and then Carpe just comes over there and hits like 3-4 headshots in a row, and all of a sudden the team fight can change.
That's actually, when I watched this match, that's exactly what I thought, because I was like, oh, Carpe swaps to Widow, it's over. But then he just like hits 3 headshots, and I'm like, okay.
There's nothing you can do.
I got nothing else to do.
You throw the calculator, throw it out the window.
Throw your papers in the air. I'm done with it.
Right. That's what happens. So I was going to ask you, I know that when, this might be more in 2019, but I believe I heard this correctly, that you were of this philosophy that when you build a team, it's something like the most important thing is to have, I don't know how I can break this down correctly. For like every 1 kill, you want like 4 or 5 people to be a part of that kill. That's another thing that you get to like a large level of success. And then also this idea of pairing like carry aggressive people with more passive, safer styles of playing. So I was wondering if after you went through the roller coaster that was 2019 and you went into building this 2020 roster, how much of that did you still keep with you? Did some of it work out, some of it didn't? And how much of that really went into building the roster that we see before us in 2020?
I think that philosophy like sticks with me for a big part still, and it kind of got extended to like a second layer, I would say, because the whole idea about I really like matching aggressiveness with passiveness. You can't just have like 6 aggressive players who are like considered star players and then you put them on a team, it would just explode. And in the same sense, you can't have 6 passive players who just like wait and try to get kills, because then you end up doing nothing. So this like philosophy of balancing aggressiveness with passiveness like still sticks with me for a big part, and I think it is still seen in like a lot of Overwatch League teams that if the best teams look to have like 1 aggressive DPS at most, and you want to have like an aggressive support backline or like an aggressive tank or something like that, but you can't have like aggressiveness all over the board. If you have 2 aggressive DPS, then that's probably not going to work. If you have 3 aggressive supports and tanks, then that's probably not going to work either. So you want to balance that. It's all about balancing, and I think the extent to which it got like even greater, that whole philosophy is that last season what we didn't take into account was like psychology to a big part, and something that I noticed really quickly last season, even after the first stage that went really well, is that psychology is like the main task of a coach, is to keep your team motivated and the morale in check, and it's all those psychological you would think small things that are actually the most important thing in the game. It's all about teamwork, it's all about trusting, it's all about like being able to communicate and not getting tilted. There's so much psychological stuff happening in Overwatch, and I think in every other sport, that you want to build a psychologically very steady team. And in that sense, something that gets added on to that philosophy is that you want to have people who talk a lot, and you want to have people that don't talk a lot, and you want to have extroverts on the team and introverts on the team. Like, you can't just have a team of one specific range of people. You have to have like broad range of different personalities and different types of people on the team, so that it all can work out. I think something that we did this season is when we built that roster is to look at mainly people who are very much into who are very competitive, first of all, and then who make sense from a psychological perspective in building the team. Players that like make sense together, like how would this guy match up with this other guy if we put them on a team? Like, could they talk to each other? Like, would there be a clash of personalities or something? Would there be too big egos that would clash against each other? Stuff like that is all things that were considered, and in the end, those people who made the team for a very good reason. And maybe it wasn't necessarily like because they were the superstar in game. Maybe it was just because we think behind the scenes, those people are the ones that will drive the team to success. And for example, one thing that I can say about that is that people like there was a lot of criticism or like doubt about Beast mainly, because he never played in Overwatch League. Well, all of our other guys did, but this guy is like someone who is actually really important just from a psychological team perspective, because he drives competitiveness like probably no one else on the team, and he just is insanely valuable in having everyone focused all the time. He's like he plays a very big role in the game in terms of what he does for calling and keeping everyone focused. It's those kind of things that you wouldn't consider necessary, because everyone just sees what they do in the game. Everyone sees like the widow pop off, but those things have been more important to us this season for building the roster.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, for you, when you were helping to build this roster, did that kind of present a challenge for you? Because I can imagine that if you're somebody who's building a team based off of these very passive type of abilities that aren't as much distillable in statistics, it's hard to kind of be able to know how personalities are going to work together.
Yes. So, I was going to say, you can't...
kind of like a learning curve for you?
Yeah, you can't see Beast's competitiveness in a VOD review, right? Like, that's something you got to find out afterwards.
Yes. Like, personally, something that I learned last season was I really broadened my whole perspective about what I want to do and what I can do, as like an asset to the team. Like, I went away from just doing statistics, and I actually got more into the sports psychology part of things and tried to think about all of this. So while it presented this challenge to like my past self, I think more so I took that with open arms, because I really am convinced that this is like the most important thing about Overwatch, or maybe sports in general, is the psychological like underlyings of or underwirings of your team. And so I really appreciated that challenge, really.
So when you were like crafting this team, and obviously I know because we had Jay on the show and he talked about the struggles from 2019, and how a lot of it wasn't necessarily, and we saw it in stage 1, right? Like, the players had talent, that there seemed to be a lot of stuff behind the scenes that were leading to the roller coaster of a season that you like to bring up. When you were creating this team, obviously a lot of emphasis was put on, like you said, players that work together, competitive players that would get along with one another, that would create a good team environment in the sports psychology of it all. Are you worried at all that you may be overcorrected, where you might have put too much emphasis on something like that, as opposed to maybe like you said, that pop off carry potential? Or do you think that are you really confident in your ability to sort of balance the two?
I think so. It always depends on what your goals are. I think if you want to build like a roster that is sustainable over a long period of time, then I think we did the right choice. I think those guys could work together for like multiple years, to be honest. I can obviously not say if that happens or not, but the risk of this thing exploding is extremely low.
Yeah.
Which is something that I would not be able to say last season. And if your risk of exploding is low, then you are long-term sustainable, and maybe long-term already means for just half a year, which is long enough to outlive like other teams that like have a good first half of the season, but then something happens behind the scenes that people don't see, and then one of the players gets like completely shut out of the group or something, and all of a sudden the team collapses. And that's where, with this season being so long,
and all the travel,
I think that's where we have an advantage of just like being definitely sustainable. Like we don't have any patchwork to do in the middle of the season. I think. I mean, maybe there's something, but I don't see any risk of that happening where we have to patch up like little difficulties, little issues that we are having. And in that sense, I think we did the right choice. I mean, at the end of the season, we'll see. Maybe we stand corrected, and having just 5 players who are really popping off is the key to victory, even if they are like fighting each other like day in, day out. But I don't think so. I think what we have right now is insanely valuable, and it will last for a long time, and it will show at the end of the season.
That's interesting. This idea of like building for the grand finals instead of the stage playoffs, right? Even though there's no more stages.
Well, I wouldn't even say grand finals too. I'm thinking of the season over season wise. Like I know I compare esports a lot to sports, but how often do you see an NHL team like vacate half their roster or 3/4 of their roster? It doesn't happen.
Or their entire roster.
And not only is not only is this good for like Toronto or individual teams, but it's also good for the league, because if you do have the situation where psychology isn't good, people hate each other, and then players leave to other teams, if that was too much, players just going to leave the whole OWL as a whole.
Yes,
they're not going to want to play if they keep on moving around, keep on having to reform relationships and stuff like that, and that hurts the longevity of OWL in general.
Yes, something that is happening right now in esports and in Overwatch specifically is that a few years ago everything was very short term. Like players had like 3 months contracts, and at most like half a year or something. And if you had a 1-year contract, then everyone would tell you what the fuck is happening to you.
Yeah.
But right now, what's happening in esports is people get more and more long-term contracts. In Overwatch League, people have 2, 3, 4-year contracts. And the more this is happening, the more you have to build for like a sustainable team. Because if you don't, then there's no player to pick up at the start of next year, because everyone is under contract already. So what you're gonna do is like, are you gonna spend like $10 million to just buyouts? Probably not. And then you're just screwed. So if you actually build for long-term sustainability, I think it will show like maybe not the year you do it, but maybe 1, 2, 3 years down the line.
Yeah. And how important do you think, like, let's say, I know you're not obviously considering off season 2021, right? That's too far away, but how important is it really to have like a good reputation throughout the Overwatch League of being able to like maintain that healthy like work-life balance, that healthy relationship with players for like potential free agents who you might want to pick up one day? Or has that not really reached the Overwatch League yet? That might be my sports background showing a little bit too much.
So I don't necessarily know, because I think this is already happening, where a lot of players and agents, player agents, like take in mind what is happening in a team, and do I want, if you're an agent, for example, you would think, do I want to send my player to like, let's say, Chicago, because Chicago is not in the Overwatch League.
Exactly, yeah. We're not going to name names here.
Do I want to send my player to Chicago because Chicago over the last 3 years was struggling, and everything we heard was like bad. The players were like in bad conditions. They didn't have apartments, and they were sleeping on the floor and stuff like that. Then you probably don't want to send your player to Chicago. and stuff like that is already happening. And a lot of it is still that players want to go to teams that are performing well, which is fair because you want to win championships.
Absolutely.
Obviously, but this is getting more and more the case where players would not go to a team because of other players telling them about the bad experience, or maybe because there's someone they don't like on the staff, or like something like that. It's happening, and it probably will increase just with how things are looking and with everything getting like more stable, because right now everyone is living like in their own city, and that's not going to change. So everything is going to be more stable than it was in esports before. And with this stabilization setting in, I think those factors are growing.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to move maybe more into the. Let's review into the Paris game, maybe move into that and see what you thought about that, sir. Chris, actually, I think. Oh, there you are. Sorry, I thought I lost your mic for a second. I saw your mouth, but I couldn't hear you. I was concerned.
I actually just muted myself. Whoopsies.
Nice.
Technical issues. Yeah, so I actually just wanted to a quick question about kind of games in general in the Paris game. What's your and the coaching staff's level of communication with the players during the whole game? Like, are you guys able to, I guess, talk in between maps? Are you allowed to come on the stage to talk to them, or what's the style of communication that you guys utilize there?
So how it works in terms of the rule set this season is that we are not allowed to talk between rounds. So like between attack and defense, we are not allowed to talk. Between rounds of a control map, we are not allowed to talk, but we are allowed to talk in between maps. We have a minimum time that we have for every break where we can talk. That is most of the time it's getting longer than the minimum amount of time that is set to us, because there's an ad break and whatever else is going on in the actual broadcast. Between maps, we are going to talk to them, and then what was implemented newly this season for 2020 is that after every 2 maps, there's going to be a longer break where the players will come to the dugout and where we talk to them directly, because otherwise we would just talk over like TeamSpeak.
Okay.
But after every 2 maps, they are allowed to go to the dugout, allowed to go to the bathroom and stuff, and that's when, during those breaks, it's obviously when we talk about strategy, about patterns that we might have recognized in the last map, and something they have to look forward or look out for the upcoming map. We go over like strategy, what we want to do in that map again, like how we want to play the attack, how we want to play the defense, where we want to position and stuff, just as like quick reminders, and maybe address like obvious big issues that were like a problem in the previous map that we just want to fix like from now and then. But since time is very limited, we really address like only the most important topics that come to mind.
Interesting. And do you guys like have access to their comms as well during games, or is it?
Yes. So we can entirely hear them. Yes.
Okay, that's sweet.
Yeah, it's a big part in Overwatch in general, just to communicate and coordinate. So we have to know what they are saying, so we can actually address this, because communication is most of the time also like the biggest problem, or it's either the biggest positive or negative teams have most of the time. So making that a positive instead of a negative is something that will win you games flat out. So we are required to hear them, and we will address issues if there will be any.
Yeah. So who on the Toronto Defiant sort of takes that reign then, in terms of being? Is it one of those things where it's shared across multiple people? Is it one of those things where it falls more on one person as opposed to another? And do you have a preference for who the shot caller usually is in a team environment for Overwatch?
So how it works in our team is that we have like a fallback, let's say.
Yeah.
Let's call it a fallback. We normally don't say it's a fallback, but we
Yeah.
have like a fallback plan of communication, where what we want to do
Mm-hmm.
in the game is after every fight we reset our mindset and we talk about what the enemies have in terms of their ultimates, like what does their ult economy look like,
Sure.
what does our ult economy look like, and then we create a plan out of that. And that's most of the time it's two different people. The ult economy stuff is done by Calyx, who's like tracking all the ultimates. He's the main support. He's mainly responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
Other people are chiming in. Sometimes he asks questions of like, did they use Earthshatter there, because he might have not seen everything.
Yeah.
That's where communication is key. So everyone chimes in for like a few seconds and talk about that, and then afterwards we make a plan, and everyone is free to make a plan. Everyone is free to create a plan like based on their own ultimates. The only thing that we ask is that everyone comes to a comes to a conclusion very quickly of what they want to do. Because everyone has to be on the same page. So if there's someone making a plan, you just agree to it. Or if you have a serious problem with it, if you have a serious issue with it, you say, no, we can't do that. But you have to immediately address it, because there's not much time in Overwatch.
Yeah.
To do that, you have like a few seconds between fights, and then the fight is like going crazy anyway. So you have to be quick and you have to be decisive, and this decisiveness in the end is something that we want one player to like take into their hands, where someone says, okay, we do this now. If they can't reach a decision, then someone has to say, okay, we want to do this. And I won't go into detail like who's doing the most and stuff, because I think that can be taken into advantage from other teams.
No problem, we understand.
We have players that are dedicated to doing like to making those decisions if there's no decision being reached. But most of the time everyone can chime in with their own idea of what they want to do, and most of the time that's really good, because like sometimes someone who doesn't say a lot all of a sudden comes up with this brilliant idea of how to win the next team fight, and then we just like destroy them using like a single ult or not even any ult at all, because we make this great play and we're like, okay, that's exactly what we want.
Okay, so before we get into the Paris thing, there was actually one more thing I want to talk about. We had Jay on the show over the summer and sort of talked about the boot camp and how the scrims and stuff were going at the time. I was wondering if it's just sort of like what were some of the most impressive, like the biggest growth part of the team that you've noticed from when it was first put together, when you guys were in the boot camp in Korea, to now that you've actually seen them on the stage and how the match has been played? And then for all the fans out there, what really is like a realistic expectation for this team moving forward?
Number one, obviously.
Yeah, obviously, aside from number one, right? We can.
Let's start with the easy question. The biggest growth in the team is probably just related to how they work with each other. Because at the start there was nothing no cohesion really in the team. No one of those guys played with each other before. I think maybe there was one duo that played on the team before or something. Obviously Kavif and Agilities, but aside from that,
I thought Nevix and Chauffeur played like way back in Cloud9, but maybe I missed. This doesn't matter. Sorry, continue.
That's possible. But so team cohesion is something that increased massively, and that's something that I think is hopefully because this is how we wanted the team to be. And it is something that we worked on a lot just to build cohesion, just to make sure that communication is on point, that everyone understands each other. Something that we got really good at is just like staying focused and staying very. What Fefe likes to say is that, or likes to do is that we put a lot of intensity into our scrims and into our practice, because if you put intensity into practice and you put intensity into the actual match, and just having intensity and focus in our practice is something that we increased insanely at, and I think that's greatly thanks to Fefe, because of the way he coaches and because of the way he structures everything. And just have like I know it's like so intangible everything that I bring up, but like trust me, it is the most important thing in this game. It's something that you don't see. It is the intensity that everyone puts in. It's a cohesion in terms of calls. It's a decision making that we have when it comes to making plans. It is the speed with which we talk and agree to something, and with which we can be on the same page in the actual game, because at the end of the day, you have like 30 seconds in a fight, and if you're not on point in those 30 seconds, you probably lose the game. You lose fight after fight, and then you lose the game. And because we have all those intangibles in place right now, I think we are in a very good place. And that leads into the second question, which is about where I think we would realistically end up, and something that's not necessarily something we like to think about, because what we do right now is literally focus on like week by week. This week we have one team to focus at. It's Philadelphia. We put a lot of emphasis and practice on it's Philly. Philly does this. Philly does this. Philly does this. Be prepared for Philly. Philly. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which place we are right now. We could be first in the standings. We were at the very start.
But you're right. After the first game, we were number one. Well, we can always say that.
But yeah, where we end up, it's hard to say. I think the first half of the season will be a very big indicator, and it can be a very big boost to confidence. Because the first half of our season is our easier half. And I think it's possible that we even make the mid-season, for which you would have to be top four.
Top four, yeah.
I think it's something that is hard to do, but it's achievable if we just stick to our plan of going week by week, and if we can keep up our motivation and our focus that we have shown in practice and have shown on stage. I don't want to make any promises.
No, for sure.
It's very possible that we end just middle of the pack after the first half or after the season after all. But there's high potential in this team, and if we do everything correctly, if we stick to what we are doing right now, I think we can surprise a lot of people who put us not even into play-ins.
I saw people
and see where it leads.
No, I completely agree. I like stuff saved of everyone who put Toronto at number 20 or number 19, and I want to screenshot it when we make mid-season, baby.
I have my book.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
Each individual one.
DM me. No, I'm not even DMing. I'm tweeting it. It's going public. But no, yeah, that's really cool. So, I mean, I guess I'm down to move into sort of some of the thoughts on how the Paris game went. Unless, Chris, you have any other questions you want to ask before we go into that?
Maybe just one more quick one. In terms of scrimming, just once again from a stats perspective, I love stats. Stats are fun.
Stats are fun.
You do too. Everybody does. Doesn't. Do you guys like basically when you do scrimmings basically develop like a baseline stats for each individual player and then kind of measure them on each scrim? So I'm thinking is like, let's say you theoretically is, let's say like Beast, he averages like 8k damage per 10 minutes, and then you like kind of create a baseline and then you measure each individual scrim based off of that. Do you get into that like detailed minutia, or is that just like stats heaven for somebody that's unreachable?
That is something that I would like to say I do, but no, I don't.
Okay.
It is, and at the end, there's no baselines that we are really doing for scrim by scrim. A lot of the things that we are doing and the coaching stuff is not necessarily related to stats. Stats are very useful in some cases where you want to like look at like maybe you see in the game, you see like something weird happening and you're like, oh, why do we use nano boost this way? And then you try to figure out how you use nano boost, so you look at the stats, and they are a very good tool to help you figure out what is happening and help you figure out if there's like an issue, and then you can quickly see and address that issue if you find it. It's a very good reality check if you think things are going well but they are not. but it doesn't get into such detail where you're like, oh, you did like 5k less damage this scrim.
Yeah.
Maybe you did something wrong.
What the heck?
Yeah.
Yes.
I would, if I was in your position, I would totally just get destroyed by paralysis of analysis.
Yeah.
I'd be like, what's the stats on everything? Like, what is the pathing D.Va takes to get to enormous point B to like? It would just be like.
But I'm sure it's also easier
Yeah.
when you're running like a mirror comp, right? Like maybe like stage 1 goats or stage 2 goats where everybody was running goats. Then you can kind of, but it's hard to be like, hey Beast, you didn't run. It's like, well, we played, Ryan D.Va as opposed to Ryan Orisa, or they ran dive on us.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I'm not playing Winston this time. I'm playing Reinhardt. So I could see how like that would be pretty hard.
Yeah.
A lot of stats are very much related to your playstyle and
Exactly.
what every player's role is in the team, and this might differ from team to team. So if our like main tank plays a very passive style, then I can't say, oh, you get way less kills than this like super aggressive Reinhardt who like charges in all the time. That's just unfair. And,
way less pins than Gate. What are you doing?
Yes. So there's a good way to use stats, and they are a great tool at times, but you can't, unfortunately, you can't use them for everything.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Let's talk about Paris.
Yeah, we can talk about Paris. So I don't want to go too much because I had some stuff about specific strategies, but I understand that we are playing Philly in a day, and I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
But I guess the first question was, I think what a lot of people in the Defiant fan base are wondering about was when I was at the watch party, right? Everybody's all ready to see the debut, and then Logics and Agilities goes on stage, and you could just see everyone was like, wait a minute. I was wondering why did you guys run Logics and Agilities to start and not? Because I think most people thought Surefire would be the staple. I think one of the announcers was like, "Oh, he doesn't like playing control," and we kind of laughed at that. Is this something we might see moving forward? Is it like map dependent, where it's like it depends on the strategy you guys want to use and when you want to use it? Is it like hero dependent? And what sort of went into that? Because I know a couple people were asking me about it.
So yeah, we have our ideas of when we want to use every player, and I won't say if we see more Logics on control or not. Maybe he will play a hybrid, or maybe he will play assault, or maybe he won't play ever again. I won't say that, obviously.
Yeah.
But we have our set ideas of how we want to use our players and how we think they are helping the team. And for that Paris game, we thought it is very good to have Logics in that first on that first map on Lijiang, because the way he calls when he plays Reaper when he played Reaper on Lijiang in that map was very helpful for the team to focus on what to do, and in a way it was better than what Surefire could have done in that situation. So there was just it's something that is not necessarily related to what you see on the screen, but it's related to the results that you get. Having Logics on that control map was very important, because the way he calls or the way he called in that map is very helpful for the whole team to know what to do and how to do that, and what to play. And obviously, aside from those intangibles, again, there's like something that is related to hero pools. For example, then we played Logics and Surefire on Havana later on, which is related to the fact that we expect to play Widow on that map.
Exactly.
And another thing would be, for example, Junkertown, where people want double sniper, then we probably would go with Surefire and Logics again, just because
the potential to run double
it's
sniper.
the Widow and Hanzo matchup, and those two are simply the best at Widow and Hanzo. So might as well go with them. But it's not just things that you see on the screen that are related to decision making of who is going to play where. It is also very much related to the map, and maybe someone has like a hero that is totally not on the page of anyone, and it works really well on this map, so we might just put him in because they can play like, I don't know, Torbjorn or Ashe or something.
This is really cool strategy that No, that's cool.
But yeah, generally it's something that we decide from map to map, and we will see.
We'll see. Fingers crossed. We'll see who plays on Sunday.
Definitely. Now, you guys seem like you guys were struggling a little bit up against the sim. And
Yeah.
I remember post-game interview, Surefour was like, I believe he said that you guys just didn't have a lot of scrim practice against him.
No.
Now, was there any reason for that? Was it just like there's like not a lot of teams running scrim sim, so you didn't think you had to go or like practice with it, and then kind of parents just kind of popped that off and you guys didn't know, or is that something that just kind of caught you aloof? Like what was going on with that situation?
It was like he said, we didn't face it a lot in scrims. So not a lot of teams played sim.
Okay.
We did see it in scrims. It was not the first time we ever played against it. But it was a situation where we unfortunately weren't prepared 100% because we couldn't be. And I think something that will happen over the season, especially with the new rules that are coming in, is that you will never be prepared 100%. There's always something that will catch you off guard. Maybe Carpe on Sunday will suddenly swap to he will suddenly swap to Ash or something, and we are like, oh, this Bob guy is doing a lot of damage. So we just didn't know how to play against it perfectly, and we did adapt actually throughout the game. We were very happy with how the guys were calling our win conditions and what to do against it later on, but it was just not quick enough, and so the first map was something that we unfortunately didn't win. But I think over the course of the match did they play it again?
I think they played it
played
a
it
little
again
bit more.
I remember Iconval, I believe they played it into at the start. There's a couple times where they played it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I don't want to mention. I think that you guys did adapt very well to it, and I know that during last season, one of my criticisms of the team sometimes was like the adaptability wasn't as wasn't really a thing. So so I was like, I was thinking about like going to this season with Hero was like, we need to be adaptable, and then seeing you guys like adapt to the sim pretty well on the throughout that game was like a weight off my chest. I was like, yes.
So yeah, just to address it real quick. So last season, something that was like on our page a lot was adaptability. Like we didn't, like you said, we weren't able to adapt to anything. If there was a new strat, we would just completely lose to that strat and get destroyed. Something that this team is fortunately not doing. They are actually really good at adapting by themselves, which they have to do without the coaches. That's what they have to do because we can't talk to them like we discussed earlier throughout the map. So they actually figured out how to play against it. It wasn't enough for the first map, but over the course of the match, we learned how to do that. And in terms of the season, I think are very well set up with the hero pools coming in because we think we are very good at adapting to new metas and new play styles very quickly.
Yeah,
I think when the Q patch rolled out, we were one of the first teams to play the now meta. We knew very quickly what to do, and I think that's a very good sign. I obviously can't say that this is going to last, but from what I've seen, all the data points into the right direction.
Well, I also wanted to relate that quickly to what you're saying earlier about shot calling, where you guys kind of have a reset after each fight and then kind of discuss things. I think that's a good way for you and Fefe to have, or the coaching staff to have, kind of install a mechanism for adaptability within the players. Because what that sounds like to me is that sounds like you're kind of almost flushing out the emotion of the last team fight. Let's say you lost, or let's say you win. You have your certain we've all won or lost team fights. I sometimes get pretty tilted after them. So it's it's a great way of kind of resetting your emotion and refocusing on something new, which definitely helps with figuring out adaptability.
Yes, it's something that is very important. You want to get rid of negative emotions. You do want to keep positive emotions and carry them on, obviously, but having this reset in mind and having everyone focus and just having someone scream focus sometimes is something that is actually really helpful. And it is very helpful for adaptability. We have players who can think by themselves. Like something that we stress over and over in practice is that the coaches won't be there to help them. So we actually don't help them a lot because they have to figure out stuff by themselves. A lot of times I think coaches are overrated because players have to do all the work, and if you don't let the players do the work, then the players will end up just relying on the coaches. If they are just waiting for that DM to tell you what to do, then they will wait for that DM in the match, but it won't ever come. And so with the way we are coaching right now and with the way that players are taking it, I think adaptability is something that we probably don't have to worry about too much, because right now our guys are very smart and know how to like think quickly and react quickly.
That makes a lot of sense. Which is really good for Hero Pools. I always joke, like, I think our 2019 team would have been horrible had we had to go into Hero Pools with that roster. But that's something obviously you couldn't foresee at the time. So I guess I had some of my opinions. I think Chris had some of his. We did the whole preview show after the Paris game. But from your perspective, what were some of the pros and cons that you saw from Paris game? I mean, a lot of, again, people had question marks about the team. People have question marks about Beast, about Calyx, about Nevix, right? These are people who we hadn't seen in a while. I know we saw Calyx, but it was on the Boston Uprising.
Sure.
So, but Beast and Nevix, right, hadn't performed in a while. What was your overall thoughts about how the team performed and just maybe some of the pros and cons and some of the stuff that you're going to work on moving forward?
So a big positive was the way we deal with unexpected things. First of all, the biggest unexpected, well, I wouldn't say unexpectedness, but the biggest thing that was new was the stage. We practiced in a scrim environment. We practiced in Toronto. We practiced in Korea, but we practiced. We never played on stage for the last like half year. And just putting those guys on stage and seeing that it works is great. Like there was no one who got nervous. There was probably some emotions in play because those guys are humans and we want emotions to be in place. So maybe they got a little bit more excited than usual, and they definitely did. But it was not overly so. Something last season was that, for example, Ivy had a lot of problems on stage because he got nervous, especially at the very start when he was first put on. And it's now nothing we have to worry about. Like Beast never had Overwatch League experience, but we knew that this would not be an issue for him because of the kind of guy he is. He's the kind of person who blooms in that kind of environment more so than like crumbles under it. So this is the biggest positive that we can draw out of it. There was like nothing bad coming out of stage. There was no stage fight or anything. We dealt with the unexpected really well. We dealt with the Symmetra that we didn't foresee well. Was another positive. Something that I think was negative. Let me think. There was like, it was the way we what exactly was it? There was like one big thing in this game that really stuck out to us that we did address afterwards, which was mainly, I think, related to staying focused and stay like calling things about where you want to position, how you want to go on in the next fight, because sometimes things would get a little bit messy against Paris, and then we would be like, oh, we hope he clutches it. This is not necessarily something we want to see, and it is not necessarily something we have seen over the last 2 weeks where we went back into practice and tried to address that. So we tried to talk about this, and I think we addressed it really well. We want to make sure that everyone stays focused, like from game to game. Something that we have struggled with, I think, against Paris as well, is like once things are going well, we might start trolling a little bit. Not necessarily in like a match, and I wouldn't say like trolling, but like the same idea of where you stop focusing as much, you kind of let it go and be like, oh, this is one. But things are not that easy in Overwatch League. So you can't just go into the default and think that things will go by themselves. You have to go the next step, and I think at times against Paris we struggled with that. At other times it looked fine. For example, on Havana, when everything looked great, we actually did full hold them at the end. It's not something where we lost the last point because we messed up or something. So it's something that didn't happen all the time, but it happened sometimes. And if things go well, we do want those guys to stay focused, and I think it's something that we again addressed over the last 2 weeks. So I hope we have addressed all the issues. Philly is obviously a completely different team from Paris, so there will be unexpected things again. There will things that we have not seen in scrims. The playstyle is completely different. But I think from the work that we put in the last 2 weeks related to what we saw went wrong against Paris, we can at least be positive about what is going to happen against Philly.
Yeah. I guess that kind of segues into the question I was going to ask about Philadelphia was, I mean, obviously part of this, we do the little preview shows, we do our analysis on the post game. And I'm, as big of a Defiant fan as there is, but it's hard for me to predict, and this is no offense to anybody, the Defiant winning the game versus Philadelphia. So I was just like, Barroi, sell me, right? Sell me on the Defiant winning this game. Like, what is win conditions? Yeah, exactly. Because I want to predict. I want to make the tweet that I can pin where I'm like Defiant 3-1, and then it happens, and I get to be like, hey, I'm so smart. But yeah, like, what are some of the things that you're looking for in this game? And if we are going to win, because I know it's going to be tough, how do you think that's going to be done without giving away obviously your secrets?
Yeah. So yeah, it will be tough for sure. Philly again is a completely different team than Paris. It's something that you don't necessarily find in scrims a lot because they are an extremely passive team. At least they were in those last 2 matches. Maybe they changed their playstyle. It's always possible. I don't think they did, but it's a completely different team, and it's something that the only way to prepare for that is like to hammer that idea into the brains, so to say, of the players, and try to find scrim partners who scrim in a similar way, where they know that you can do certain things against those passive teams, and you can't do things against those passive teams as well. You can't like overextend as much because they will exploit that as hell out of you more than any other type of team. Maybe you have to be a little bit more patient. Maybe you have to like take a fight slower. Maybe you have to like take positions without using your resources and wait for them to do like the first step and not necessarily do the first step yourself. It's something that we talked about a lot in practice, and we will talk about before the match, obviously, and in our warm-up. We try to prepare them as much as possible for the game, but then at the end of the day, we will just throw them in. And I think the best way to look at this is that right now what we are doing with those guys sometimes is that we just like throw them into like a scrim with the coaches not really talking at all. We call it like something that we call it a game day mindset, where everything is treated as game day. So they have to think for themselves. They have to talk about comps. They have to talk about win conditions. They have to talk about what to do, where to play. And I think this is something that went really well in our practice recently. I don't think we will be able to win all the maps convincingly against Philly. It will be a hard one. They are a very good team, and they are a very stylistically printed team. I think we have some new strats that might catch them off guard, because Philly is a team that is built with some Korean players that have barely any English, and maybe throwing in like 1 or 2 weird strats against those players who can't speak English and can't communicate properly with the English players on the team will completely catch this team off guard, because that's normally what happens with those teams. Is if they can't communicate properly and something new is happening, then they can't adapt quickly, because all of a sudden there is a language barrier. And we try to exploit that. We try to exploit other things that we've saw in them. I might not talk about.
But we understand.
We also know what their strengths are, and we try to prepare our players for that. We don't want to fall into the trap of like just playing the Philly game. We want to play the Toronto game, because at the end of the day, we don't want to just like look at the team and be like, oh, look, they're really good at that, we should do that too. No, we want to find ways to play against this, and we want to find plays to play our way and use our style to win against Philly. And I think in our preparation we've been really adamant about that. And there in the map pool that is upcoming, I think there are some maps that we are really good at, and some where we are not so good at. So I expect us to lose some and win some. But at the end, I think there's a very good chance that we will come out on top.
That's cool. That's exciting, because I mean, again, I want to pick them. The problem was I rated Philly super highly. Like I was one of those people where I knew the communication would be an issue, but it's like, man, when you look at the talent on paper, and I'm actually happy that Ivy gets to play, because I understand that you said he when he was on and he was working for the Defiant last year, he really was one of the better players in the league.
There's a reason why he was on Defiant. He is a very good player.
Exactly. So I'm happy to see him succeed. And in Funny Astro was, again, we talked about the free agent show, was a main support player I was really looking forward to see. So I rate them highly. But yeah, I think I agree. The communication and the structure is where I give the Toronto Defiant the edge. So I'm looking forward to it. So that's on Sunday, 5 p.m. If anyone's 5 p.m. Eastern, right? I think I'm right.
Yes.
I'll double check, but I'll put it in the description if anyone's interested in checking that out. So I mean, I'll be watching it. But yeah. So anything else that you wanted to add there, Chris?
No. I think you covered all the bases pretty well there.
Okay.
It was great chatting with you. Honestly, it was like very, very insightful. A lot of fun learning about your position and everything like that.
Sure. No, I was just gonna say thank you so much for coming on. We'll put your Twitters and all that stuff in the description below if anyone's interested. If there's anything you want to say before you go off, you can plug anything that you want for anyone listening or watching.
Well, the only thing that I want to say is that there's like really something to look at this season. I think we've built a great team, and I think over the course of the season we won't win every game, but we will hopefully win more than not. And I think there's a lot to look forward to. I think we have a great mindset about new strats and what we want to do, and maybe this weekend will be an example of us showing like new things that will totally blow people out of the water. And it's not something that is just like nice to win games at, but it's also something fun to look at and exciting to look at if you're a fan and if you're just watching the game. And I think throughout the season we will have that more and more, where people will have fun watching us and will have fun watching our team, following our team.
So actually, I completely agree. By the way, I can't wait for this season. I'm super excited. But I have one more question before we let you go. Is there any game throughout the year you're looking forward to the most? Any team you want to play? Don't say homestand, because we're all looking forward to the homestand. We get that. That's the bread and butter, right? But is there any team that you just want that crack at that you're looking forward to play?
Okay. I think there's one team I really want to play, and fortunately enough, we play them twice. And that's New York Excelsior. I think New York is like a really, really good team. And we practice against them a lot because they're East Coast. And because of that, I think we know how they play a lot. And I think if we actually get to a match, which is like months out because we only play them in the second half of the season, if we get to that match, I think we will put all the energy that we have into that. Whenever we practice them, our guys are like so intense. There's like so much energy in the scrim. It's insane. Like,
awesome.
And I think it won't be different in the match. There's like going to be so much hype on our side just playing them. It's not like a bad rivalry or because everyone hates them. It's just so exciting to play against those guys because they are so good. And I think that will make for a really good game. Something that we might even have the potential to win. So I would not put that off at any game actually this season too, where I think we can win a lot of those games. We can win every game just because we have so much energy, and this is one of those that I'm really looking forward to.
No, that's awesome. I know Richard, the guy who runs Alpha Fly, is going to be a big fan of that because he used to do 5 Deadly Venoms, so that's really cool. No, looking forward to that as well. I can't wait. I can't wait for that and the Atlanta Reign. Those are the 2 teams that I can't wait to see Defiant play.
And Vancouver.
And Vancouver, the battle. Yeah, except it's in London. But that's a different that's a different conversation for a different day. I would have loved if that was at either of our home stands because the Ready Set Pwn guys came on. That was pretty fun, but... yeah. So anyways, thank you so much for coming on. I had a great time. Hope you guys did as well. If you listen to this, yeah, no problem. This is we talk Defiant every week. So if you enjoyed it, stay tuned for more.
Stay tuned.
Thanks again, guys. Enjoy.